The People, celebrating 250 years. Here's this day in history.
Well, as we count down to America's 250th birthday this summer, we are sharing our We the People series, the people, places, and things of the past that have shaped our country into what it is today.
All right, this day, March 4th, back in 1809, a guy named James Madison was inaugurated as the 4th president of the United States. He is also the person the City of Madison was named after. Madison had defeated Federalist candidate Charles Cotesworth Pinckney in the 1908 presidential election, but Madison had a long history in American politics before he took the oath as president. He is known as the father of the Constitution, after coming up with many of the key ideas that would be included in the legislation. Madison also helped draft the Bill of Rights in the late 1700s. His time as president was consumed by the War of 1812. Madison served for 2 terms as the commander-in-chief, leaving office in 1817. The city of Madison, Wisconsin, named after the president the same year he died, 1836, eventually becoming the Badger State's new capital. Today, Madison is honored throughout the city. Schools, parks, and other observances are all named after him. That's this day in history for March 4th.
Very neat. I learned much of this information from, of course, listening to Hamilton the musical. So.
Oh, did you?
Yes.
Okay, well, good.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much.